Здравейте, уважаеми зрители! Вие сте с предаването конкретно YouTube канала на Поглед.инфо. Аз съм Георги Стамболиев. Уважаеми зрители, както сте видяли от заглавието, на гости ще ни бъде доктор Пол Крейг Робъртс. Знаете, той е бивш важен икономист. Всъщност той е бил заместник-министър на икономиката по времето на Рейган в Съединените щати. Днес той е един от анализаторите, които не се притеснява да каже някои истини, които в официалните медии и още повече правителствените лица казват много трудно, ако изобщо я казват. Mr. Roberts, hello and thank you very much for accepting our invitation for interview.
Well, thank you.
First of all, I want to start with this two-week agreement between United States and Iran. How should understand it? As a victory of Iran or as a serious setback for the United States? And perhaps more importantly, where is Israel in this agreement and in this situation?
Yes. The way I see it at the moment is we don't have a lot of good information. So the way I see it at the moment is that the Iranian government has allowed Donald Trump to get off the hook. And the hook he was on was this vow to destroy the Iranian civilization last night, which is nothing he can do. Unless he were to use nuclear weapons. I personally do not think the United States military would have allowed that. So Iran has saved Trump's bacon for Trump. Now, will he realize that and be thankful? And continue easing out of the situation that he foolishly allowed the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to put him into. This was not entirely Trump's mistake. The power of the Israel lobby in the United States is immense. It's huge. And Trump was taken to war against Iran by Netanyahu. So the question is, has Trump learned his lesson? Has Trump and his Zionist government, because Trump's government is Zionist, have they learned that it's a mistake to allow Netanyahu to lead them around with a ring through their nose? We had the disastrous so-called pilot rescue. This was not a pilot rescue. This was an attempt by U.S. Special Forces to either seize processed uranium in the Iranian nuclear site or to attack the site. And it was defeated. And the United States lost considerable equipment. And then this is followed by Trump's anger, his frustration. And he can't control himself. And so he vows to destroy Iran last night. Well, the Iranians got him off the hook. So now we see, has Trump and his government learned anything? Will they assert American independence from Israel's control? If so, then Israel would be alone in its war against Iran, which it can't win.
Уважаеми зрители, продължаваме с разговорите на живо тук в студиото на Поглед. Залисани от всичките политически и геополитически теми, забравихме една от най-важните теми, а именно тази, свързана с децата. Поради тази причина, гост в следващото ни живо предаване ще бъде психиатъра доктор Цветеслава Гълъбова, с която ще говорим за зависимостите сред подрастващите. Обръщаме се към вас, всички майки, бащи, баби и дядовци. Заповядайте тук, за да поговорим открито за едни от най-важните проблеми, свързани с нашето бъдеще. 21 април от 19 часа, студиото на Поглед. Заповядайте.
The downside to this agreement is that Netanyahu says it doesn't apply to Yemen, so that he is going to Lebanon. So he's going to continue his war against Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon. So what the Iranians have done here is to take two of the three fronts against Israel off. The Iranian front's closed, the Houthi front, and so this leaves Israel able to focus on Hezbollah. This, I think, is a mistake on the part of Iran. They should insist that the ceasefire applies across the board and there are no exceptions for Israel. Otherwise, Iran is saving Trump at the expense of Lebanon. And this is not the way for Iran to treat its allies. Yeah. Now, the big overall picture is that there can never be any peace in the Middle East as long as the Zionist agenda of Greater Israel prevails. What Iran should be insisting on is that Israel negotiates away the agenda of Greater Israel, because if you have the agenda of Greater Israel, it means Iran cannot exist because it is in the way of Greater Israel, as is perhaps Turkey and certainly Saudi Arabia. And so the problem in the area is not Iran. It's not even the United States and its military bases. It's the Israeli agenda of Greater Israel. And the Israelis have been able to use, during the first quarter of the 21st century, American money, American blood, to clear the Middle East environment of Israel's enemies, of countries in the way of Greater Israel. For example, the United States has destroyed Libya, Iraq, and Syria for Israel. So if the Israelis don't give up this agenda, or the United States doesn't realize it has to separate from Israel in order to remain a sovereign power in charge of its own foreign policy, this conflict is going to continue. And so the 2-week ceasefire means nothing. It's a saver for Trump. That's all it is. So instead of defeating its enemy, Iran is saving face for Trump and freeing Israel's resources to focus on Hezbollah. That's the outcome. I think it was a mistake on the part of the Iranian government.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, the last conflicts over there in that region, in that part of the world, is not about the oil, is not about the territories, is not about influence, is not about democracy. It's only about this agenda, Greater Israel. Am I understanding correct?
Yes, that's, you know, it's amazing to me that after all the decades of Israeli prime ministers holding up in public maps of greater Israel, showing there is no Muslim Middle East. There's Israel from the Nile to Pakistan. And still the Arabs, the Muslims, the Iranians, the Turks, none of them have ever said, hey, what does this mean for us? You're claiming our countries as part of you? How can you do this? This is nonsensical. They've never said a word. And throughout this conflict with Iran, the Iranians have never said, look, the whole problem here is your claim that you own the entire Middle East, that God gave you the Middle East. It's not so. We're here. We're a nation of 90 or 100 million people. We're as large as Western Europe. What do you mean that you claim us? The Syrians never ask. The Iraqis never ask. The Libyans never ask. Why? Why did the Muslims let the Israelis get away with something that would have been to the great propaganda advantage of the Arabs?
But the question here is why also United States are part of this, because they are helping like a lot. They are explaining a lot of political reasons why they are attacking someone. Even we know about Iraq, for example, that it was a lie. The reason they go there, they went there, they destroyed the country was a lie.
Yes, of course it was. But you see, the United States became closely aligned with Israel during the Cold War in order to combat Soviet influence in the Middle East. The United States had a policy of containment, which meant it did not want Soviet influence to grow outside of the Soviet Empire and Eastern Europe, the Warsaw Pact. So the United States became allied with Israel to contain Soviet influence in the Middle East. Well, as a consequence, the United States began gifts of large sums of money to Israel. And also of military support, of diplomatic support. And over time, it developed into an arrangement where every year the United States Congress would give billions of dollars to Israel. Now, what did Israel do with the money? They used the money to purchase the American elections. The money came back to the United States in the form of Israeli campaign contributions to people running for the House of Representatives, people running for the Senate, and people running for the presidency. And so there grew in the United States the Israel lobby. And the Israel lobby was very adroit at organizing Americans behind Israel. And they used, of course, the Holocaust. The Israelis always presented themselves as victims. And this served to curtail criticism of Israel's influence over the United States government, over our universities, over our financial system, over the media, over entertainment. They essentially, over time, took control of all of the elements that control public perception of events. It was basically controlled by Israel. It still is. They even penetrated the Christian evangelicals and turned a very large percentage of them into what are called Christian Zionists. There's no such thing. You can't be a Zionist and be a Christian. But again, it was money fed to the evangelical ministers.
Can we say that they have penetrated in the White House also?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And of course, Trump's whole background, he was dependent on Jewish financing for his real estate business. His daughter married a Jew. Trump is personally close to the Israeli interest. And of course, the United States government is. It's been developing over the whole extent of the Cold War. And in the 21st century, for example, the war on terror. There was no war on terror. There was a war on obstacles to greater Israel. The Israel lobby used the events that are called 9/11, the destruction of the World Trade Center, the attack on the Pentagon. That became what they called their new Pearl Harbor that could be used to unleash the American military against Libya, Syria, Iraq. They had a program, destroy 7 countries in 5 years. Well, this program is still in operation, and Iran is the latest target of this agenda. So as long as that agenda exists, there can't be any peace. There can't be an end to the conflict. It would require the United States telling Israel, look, this agenda has caused lots of death, bloodshed. It will continue to do that, and we are no longer supporting it. So you've got to abandon it, renounce it, denounce it, remove yourself from the agenda. Otherwise, no more money, no more military equipment, no more diplomatic support.
Is it possible to happen like in Ukraine? Donald Trump did the same thing in Ukraine. Is it possible to make it here?
I don't know if it's possible or not. It depends on whether the United States government, the United States people, the military, the president, where they realize that as long as this Israeli agenda of greater Israel exists, there can be no peace in the Middle East. And so that would mean the oil supply is always threatened. It means the supply of world fertilizer is always threatened. It means the outbreak of war is always threatened. Do they want to live forever in that type of situation? Continual war, continual disruption of oil flows, continual disruption of fertilizer. The cost to the world of Israel's agenda is huge. If you lose 30% of the fertilizer, what does it mean? Does it mean you lose 30% of the food? If that's what it means, there's going to be a lot of people starving because of Israel's agenda. If you lose 20% of the oil, what's that going to do to the oil price? What would the higher oil price as it percolates through everything? What does that do to people's living standards? Are people going to start dying from the lack of income to maintain themselves? This is the cost of the Israeli agenda. If people understand this, there wouldn't be any toleration for Israel's agenda of greater Israel. But as I said a few minutes ago, this agenda has been obvious for a half century. And no one's ever said a word about it, except the Israelis. They hold up the maps showing, and they say, it used to be from the Nile to the Euphrates. And then they said, oh, well, actually, It's from the Nile and half of Saudi Arabia. And then the last redefinition of Greater Israel was from the Nile to Pakistan. So there's nothing left of the Middle East. It's all Israeli. So clearly, Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, this means the annihilation of those countries. And Syria, Iraq, Libya, they no longer exist as organized states.
Absolutely.
And the same thing will happen to the rest of the Middle East as long as the United States supports the Israeli agenda of Greater Israel.
Iran is a very old civilization, very old country. We know that it's about 6,500 years ago created. We know about the Israelis, that they're old civilization also. Can we say that there is a hidden part of this conflict, historical conflict, religious conflict here?
No.
No?
No. According to the Bible, God dispersed the Israelis to the world. It took away their country because of their evil. They were evil, and they turned their backs on God, and so he dispersed them to the world. That is, he destroyed them as a nation with a territory. Well, the Zionists over time have had an agenda first of recreating an Israeli territory. And they got the stupid British to agree to that. And then they began evicting the Palestinians from their own villages and country. And gradually over time, Palestine became Israel. And there's practically nothing left of Palestine. It's all been reabsorbed in Israel. And so, having gotten a country back, they now are going the next step with the Zionist agenda of the entire Middle East becoming under Israeli domination. So that is nothing to do with the Persians or the Muslims. You know, the Muslims appeared late, the 7th century.
Yeah.
And the Muslims have been fighting each other ever since Muhammad died over the succession. The reason the Muslim states have been impotent and ruled by others is they're split, and they hate each other worse than their enemies. And being split, it was easy for the French to colonize them, the British to colonize them, the Turks first colonized them, and now Israel says, we're going to take them over. Well, I don't think it's a religious conflict. It's the Zionist agenda. It's the Zionist program of Greater Israel. Now,
is the third temple part of this program?
Is there what?
The third temple part of this program, the Solomon's temple.
You're talking about the temple in Jerusalem?
Yep, exactly.
Well, this has something to do with the sort of ideology and religious ideology that Israel becomes great again when it rebuilds the temple. And the trouble is, the temple is not Jewish; it's Islamic. And that allegedly now they are supposed to share it, the two sects in some way. And you're correct that this introduces some sort of religious element, but it's subsidiary to this Israeli goal of greater Israel. I don't think Zionists are all that religious, and it does seem that Zionism really remains a minority position even in Israel. A lot of Jews never became ardent Zionists, and I think the Israelis didn't pay much attention to it because it didn't have any effect on them. Netanyahu's party is only about 25% of the vote. And so what I think is that the Israeli people have not really focused on the Zionist agenda because it's not cost them anything. But now that Iran has been dropping missiles on them and on Tel Aviv and so on, they're seeing it's got a cost. So there's some hope that the population of Israel would say, well, look, we hardly have enough people to occupy Palestine. How are we going to occupy the Middle East? And this agenda is causing us destruction and harm. A lot of the Israelis have left. And so what are we doing it for? We need a different government. So it is possible, if the United States was determined to reassert its own sovereignty and cease being under the control of the Israel lobby, that it could work with the Israeli population and get a reasonable government in office in Israel. And if that happened, then you could establish a peaceful situation. But to repeat my point, peace in the Middle East is totally impossible as long as the Zionist agenda of Greater Israel is in effect. And Netanyahu and his party are totally committed to that agenda. So it means the removal of Netanyahu and his party from the leadership of Israel. That is the only thing that can bring peace to the Middle East.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, that was the first part. We are making a short pause here. Second part, we will speak mostly about the consequences of this conflict to the world. I mean, as an economic, as a NATO, and so on. We'll see each other on the second part.
Yes.